Hi everybody, Lori here for Simon Says Stamp. Thank you so much for joining me today. I've got a colorful project to share with you featuring this beautiful Be Kind stamp set. And it has some gorgeous foliage images on this stamp set. I couldn't decide which one to use. I finally settled on this curvy leafy branch image. I'm going to emboss it 2 times on this panel of Neenah Solar White. So I'm doing some emboss resist along with a little partial die cutting. I feel like I'm a waitress at a restaurant reading you off the specials. Tonight's menu features emboss resist along with some partial die cutting. Can I start you off with a few appetizers? Yes. Okay, so I inked it up with Versamark ink, pouring on some Simon Says Stamp clear embossing powder, and then I just flip the panel over. I didn't even have to move the stamp, and that's because I'm lazy, but also mostly because I'm nifty. Yes, I like to conserve energy. So inking it up again with Versamark ink and then pouring on more of that clear embossing powder. Here's how I like to do on my embossing powders. I pour it over a sheet of scrap paper and then I can funnel it back into my embossing container because Mama ain't got room for all the Tupperwares. I got to keep my embossing powders in those little containers to conserve space. One of these days I'm going to show you my little craft nook. I don't even know if it's called a nook. It's literally just a desk in my living room. Yeah, I don't have room, but I'll show you. I like it. It's a nice white IKEA desk with a little white set of drawers, couple Raskog carts, boom. It's forced me to keep my supply streamlined and keep my clean as much as I can because I can't handle the mess when it's in the living room. If I had a separate craft room, I suppose it would be an utter disaster. But because it's in my living room, I got to keep it clean. That's probably a good thing. And I also got to keep the clutter down to a minimum. While I'm blabbing away, I'm ink blending, doing the emboss resist on my leafy branch image. These are my favorite distress ink cool tones ever. It's Twisted Citron, Cracked Pistachio, Mermaid Lagoon, and Blueprint Sketch. These colors together are a match made in distress ink blended heaven. They really are. And I love how one color fades into the other, the overlap of them. I mean, Twisted Citron and Cracked Pistachio together are like peanut butter and jelly. And I love how it builds the intensity into the Blueprint Sketch, which is so vibrant and blue. I like to take a dry paper towel and just rub off any excess ink. Now here is the exciting partial die cutting part. This is how I do it. I line up the die, I put it on my die cutting machine, and I put the plate on the top only halfway. You see how it's halfway? It's only gonna cut that inner part where the plate is on. Everything hanging off will not be cut. Yes, this is how you do partial die cutting. And I'll show you here when I take it off. You can see when I remove the die that only half of the leaf is cut. I'm gonna flip it over, do the same thing just like I did before. Line up the die. And I always like to use a little post-it tape to hold my die down. I don't think this is a magnetic platform either, but even if I did have a magnetic platform, I would still use post-it tape. Put that plate on halfway through and run it. This is a Spellbinders Platinum die cutting machine, which works like a charm. I highly recommend, but I think you could do this technique with whatever die cutting machine you have. Now, to release it from the rest of the cardstock, I take a clear ruler and my little X-Acto knife. My head's getting in the way, but I'm just snipping from the edge of the cut mark to the edge of the cardstock. Just 2 little cut marks, and it releases your partially die cut image. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Flip this over, do it on the second leaf. I'm using this Lawn Fawn plastic ruler, which I love. It's very thick and sturdy, but you do have to be careful when you're using a plastic ruler and a craft knife. You can cut into the ruler, and that just makes you so sad, especially if it's a nice Lawn Fawn one. It's better to use a metal ruler with a craft knife, but you probably already know that. Okay, so once I released my partial die cutting images, I realized the ink blending needed to be extended onto the edge of that little part, for lack of a better term. So I'm using the same colors like I did, and I like to call this full throttle ink blending. And by that I mean I go heavy to ink it up and I ink blend it heavy, like lots of pressure. I'm not going light, This is not subtle. This is what I call full throttle. And I say, when you're doing this type of ink blending, it's very forgiving. You're hardly ever going to have any splotches because you're going as intense as you can. Now, I have a white card base, and I'm stamping a sentiment from that Be Kind stamp set. It says, to a lovely friend. Right now, I'm just stamping the tiny little to a. With VersaFine Onyx Black ink, I put some foam tape on the back of my partially die-cut images, and I learned this little trick from Kathy Zilski. When you want to line things up to the edge of your card base, it's really handy-dandy to use the MISTI or a scoreboard. That helps. It really does. I'm adding a few of these little clear dome or clear droplet embellishments. These are by Studio Katia, and I'm also using the Studio Katia embellishment wand. Ooh, I love it. And this card's finished. It's very simple, but it has great color, a little pop of interest with the partial die cutting. I love the sentiment, to a lovely friend. Could give it to anyone, anytime, any occasion. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for joining me today. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you next time.